Good morning. It's a great honor for me to be back in Guyana. President Ali, such an honor to be back in this country where we have been able to do many things that are now being praised around the world. Thank you for your work. President Abinader, great to see you again. Dear friend, Secretary Pompeo, it's great to see you also. I also remember all the great times where we worked so hard to service the people of Colombia. What I want to share with you this morning, ladies and gentlemen, is this concept. The concept that green is the new black. And what do I mean by that? First of all, let me see. Technology. Okay, here we go. So the first concept that I want to share with you is an evident reality of Guyana. What kind of an evident reality? Every time we come, we see changes, we see progress, and we see an evolution. And there's one picture that can tell us how this looks like, and we can move the slide, please. Is this picture. In this picture, you see the current Prime Minister of India, Prime Minister Modi, that came to Guyana in the year 2000. In that year, he was not the prominent figure that he is right now, but he came to this place because he had many traditional connections. He had the opportunity to see a country that had so many ideas, that had so many concepts to be developed, but he was basically looking at a country that was in a marginal level of development. 24 years after, if we can move the slide, please. Prime Minister Modi came to Guyana. And he visited President Ali. And he saw a different Guyana. What kind of a different Guyana? A Guyana that has made progress on multiple indicators. And if we can see the next slide, I'll show this to you. Guyana, in the last 24 years, made a big advance in the Human Development Index. It looks marginal on the numbers, but it basically demonstrates that Guyana is one of the countries in Latin America that has made one of the fastest progress. In terms of the reduction of inequality, it basically reduced its inequality by more than half. In terms of energy coverage, in terms of internet access, in terms of infrastructure access, in the last 24 years, Guyana has a story that is compelling and that it's inspiring. And why is that? Because Guyana has become an energy powerhouse. That concept of a country that became one of the largest per capita producers of oil has been able to transform its GDP, has been able to become the fastest growing economy in the world, and it has also demonstrated that the presence of a rising production of oil and gas can generate income, can generate savings, and can direct those investments into critical infrastructure. And for example, it has also impacted the way that we perceive the income per capita of this country. And yes, it is true that this is a figure that comes out of what the GDP is and divided by the amount of people. But the challenge that Guyana has is to be able and capable of use the richness of the underground to defeat the poverty on the ground. This is just an image that we have seen throughout the whole world on how Guyana grew at levels that no other economy in the planet did in 2024. I had the privilege of being here just 7 months ago. I was with the team of ExxonMobil visiting one of the extraction sites offshore, seeing the professional team, seeing all the eagerness of making this country a powerhouse. But the question is, for what purpose? And President Ali, in our conversations, we've been able to clearly define that that richness has to be given back to the people, not to be dependent on oil and gas, but to use oil and gas to make Guyana an economy of knowledge, of services, and also of food security. Here, in that image that I just showed you, we had two big announcements that were made by President Ali. One was the Demerara West Hospital, and then you also see the new maternity hospital in Guyana. So if there's anyone that doubts that oil and gas, well used, can make a big difference in the world, here you have your answer. Guyana is making that progress. But the story that I also want to share with you is that I've been having long conversation with President Ali for the last years. And he said, yes, we are an energy powerhouse. But we are something even more important than that. We're a biodiversity powerhouse. We are a carbon sinking unit for the world. And Guyana has to demonstrate the world that that green capacity that is almost at the same level of oil and gas should be not only praised, but should mobilize investment and should be seen as an engine of social transformation for Guyana. That's why I consider Guyana is a green superpower. And why is it a biodiversity superpower, ladies and gentlemen? Because almost 90% of the territory of this country is forest that are still there in a world that is seeing deforestation grow at levels that we had never seen before. And basically, Guyana is a country with zero deforestation or marginal deforestation. So it is an example of how protecting nature makes a difference. Not only because of this, not only because it is a source of fresh water, but also because in terms of species, and I want to share this with you, this country just in trees and also in the capacity that it has in all its land, it's able to capture 20 billion tons of carbon. Something that few countries in the world can do, and is done on a permanent basis. So if we don't have that 90% and the conviction of the government of making Guyana a biodiversity superpower, Guyana will be not part of the solution to the climate crisis, but will be part of the problem. So this leadership has to be recognized and has to bring investment. And something that is also very important, more than 8,000 species of plants in this country, many that are unique to the Guyanese landscape. And ladies and gentlemen, just look at this. More than 700 species of birds in this country. More than 100 are unique from the Guyanese landscape. More than 800 types of fishes, either in freshwater or in the ocean. And also, as you can see here, more than 150 species of reptiles, out of which 50 are unique from the Guyanese landscape. That demonstrates that this country is a superpower of biodiversity, where we have more than 250 species of mammals. And as you can also see in my back, in terms of amphibians, this is also one of the most important places in the world. So how can we make a difference? Why are we today in an energy conference speaking about this? It's because energy and energy investment in Guyana is not contradictory with this vision. And that's why by July this year, with the leadership of President Ali, we're launching the Global Biodiversity Alliance here in Guyana. And what do we expect, ladies and gentlemen? We're not expecting to come here with lyrical declarations. We're not expecting to bring people just to have great photo ops and visit the landscapes. we have very clear KPIs in which Guyana wants to take an international leadership. One of those is something that President Ali emphasized last year when we celebrated the Concordia Amazon Summit. Guyana wants to duplicate its protected areas by December 2025 and has also committed to reach 30% protected areas before 2030. So when many leaders in the world are backing away from clear environmental objectives, Guyana is doubling down its bet, and this has to be supported internationally. It is also aimed to work with indigenous communities for ecosystemical services. It is also aimed to have the payment for communities that are involved in restoration and conservation. So it's a big bet. Now the question is, how can a country like Guyana that is protecting 90% of its territory, that is reaching 30 before 30, that has great amount of its land in indigenous communities, able to monetize that saving for the planet? And that takes me to the financial concept of what we want to achieve. We want to be able to have the concept of a gross biodiversity product. We have never accounted in the way we measure competitiveness on how important is the natural capital of a country. But Guyana has made that commitment. So in the Global Biodiversity Alliance, we're calling academics and scientists, economists, to help us define what is the value of all the biodiversity that is concentrated in a country, and how the protection of that is also part of the competitiveness. Because when people ask me, that is impossible, Mr. Duque, I tend to respond one thing. When you have 90% of a country in forest, when you are doubling its protected areas, when you have all this multiplicity of species, you're also a country that is sinking carbon of around 20 billion tons. Then the question is, a dollar invested in Guyana is a much greener dollar that invested somewhere else. And that is competitiveness, ladies and gentlemen. What we expect in terms of financial products to be addressed in that conference is we expect with the Guyanese government to build a biodiversity taxonomy that has all the sectoral KPIs and sectoral objectives to be shared with the international markets. That taxonomy will allow investors to understand when you make a green investment in Guyana, you're going to reach a specific objectives. That's why we also talk about bonds. If we have the taxonomy, and we're following the Colombian experience of 2021, we had the taxonomy, we announced it at the New York Stock Exchange, and then we were able to launch our bonds. Our bonds had a 7% greenium. So imagine if Guyana can issue bonds for the international markets connected to its environmental and biodiversity objectives, and it can have discounts that allow to allocate in a smarter way the resources that are in the world in terms of liquidity for ESG, that makes an impact. Also, eventually, debt swaps. That's not the case of Guyana today, but the concept of debt swaps can also be applicable in Amazonic countries and countries that are rich in biodiversity but are highly indebted. We believe that guarantees for local governments can also make a difference, but also for corporations, even for municipalities, and also for the national government when there are specific investments to be done in biodiversity. The impact investment portfolio for the private sector. We can have companies that are located in Guyana that in their portfolio of activities can deploy capital to protect, to restore ecosystems, to develop bio-industries, to develop biotourism, and be able to have disbursements on those impact as the KPIs are met. And last but not least, this is something that we also want to present in that Global Biodiversity Alliance, and it's to be able to issue the first biodiversity credit from Guyana it's available for investors so that every penny invested will be deployed to the conservation of that multiplicity of species, something that will make Guyana, in terms of environmental competitiveness, unique. So the green economy of Guyana is also blooming. We already saw what has happened in the energy sector, but we want to make Guyana the leader of the green economy in LATAM. We want Guyana to demonstrate that black and green can go together, that they are not antagonic, that both can have a positive impact. And there are four main areas. One is environmental and ecosystemical services with communities around the country. Restoration, that is also connected to sinking carbon, biotourism, and bioservices. If in these four areas, Guyana turns into an attractive place, Guyana will become a circular economy referral for the rest of the region. And how is this alliance going to be built? We want to have heads of state, and the President Ali has invited many of them to be here between the 23rd and the 25th of July. We expect to have CEOs and private sector leaders. We expect to have multilateral organizations, academia, and scientific organizations. This alliance is going to build to be a lasting project, and it's aimed to gather on an annual basis all these partners to demonstrate that we can make a case in front of the most advanced economies in the world where they can invest part of their ESG liquidity, and that can be also used through credits, either carbon credits or biodiversity credits, where they can also offset many of their emissions investing in these biodiversity superpowers. So, ladies and gentlemen, my invitation today is that when we see Guyana, we see this place where transformation has been driven so far by this energy revolution, but is going to have its best partner with the green revolution that President Ali and the Guyanese government is promoting. So when black and green meet and match, the result that we're going to get is sustainable development. And that's why we invite you all to be here in July to see those opportunities of a smart biodiversity finance and to see the green economy of Guyana as a unique competitiveness opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Duque.